Welcome back. News and Talk 1380 WAOK, the voice of the community, people passion and politics on this Sunday afternoon. Attorney Robert Patillo, Sean Garvey on the ones and twos. We're still here with our good friend Janelle King, conservative activist, radio show host, and you'll see her on the Georgia Gang. You'll see her on Fox News early in the morning. Before the break, we were talking about kind of really the Republican Party and their new attacks on diversity, equity, and inclusion. Vivek Ramaswamy has made a big point about being against diversity programs. Nikki Haley has said the same. Ron DeSantis has really made it a cornerstone of his campaign. And before the break, I'll pose this question to you, Janelle. When you're looking at Biden's poll numbers, where they are, or he's hemorrhaging support among African American voters, particularly African American males. You had Charlemagne the God. Well, I'm not calling a grown man Charlemagne, but just as a way to identify him, saying that he wouldn't vote for Obama and Harris again. You're seeing Muslim American groups that are protesting because of his support for Israel. He was interrupted by protesters at the Mother Emanuel Church this week. Why aren't Republicans trying to step in to fill that vacuum? It seems that they're allowing Biden to be able to run on the, hey, look, if you don't like me, just remember the other side's worse.
You know what? That's a great question. It's something that Tel and I are really focusing in on. So we are in conversations, and a lot of what we'll be doing is going to be more on the local level. But, we have our organization, Let's Win for America Action, and where we specialize in messaging to diverse communities as well as non-traditional conservatives, which is typically our younger voters. And one of the things that I've noticed is that where we are right now in society, we nitpick the heck out of every word that comes out of particularly a white person's mouth, right? So if I think that has caused there to be some reluctancy, actually a lot of reluctancy, to jump in on certain conversations, because if you don't say it right, if you don't have the right facial expression, if you don't have the right tone, if you don't have the right words, if you don't have the right message, then all of that has to be in line first before anyone will even begin to hear you, typically when it comes to our community. And that, to me, is dangerous on both ends. One, I think it's dangerous to be so reluctant that you just stay out of the conversation because then the narrative is written for you. And on the other side, I feel like our community is doing ourselves a disservice if we are only listening to those whom we identify with or we agree with. You've got to have a diversity of conversation, a diversity of thought, rather than just a diversity of physical features. So at the end of the day, we are definitely targeting that because I want to make sure that we are in a position where we can push policy that's going to help our communities rather than hurt them. What am I talking about? Let's talk about the border. There was a study that I found, actually it was sent to me, that was done from another organization in reference to whether or not Black people are in support of these illegal immigrants coming across the border all willy-nilly. And the answer is no. I think it came back 80% of the the people that we polled, said absolutely not. Why? Because they're watching migrants who are not even citizens obtain health care, get better education, have housing, have food, and are doing better than a lot of our veterans who serve this country. Not to mention, there was another policy that was going to be enacted under President Trump, and that policy was associated with linking the paying of your cell phone bill to your credit report, so that we can then begin to build credit in our communities, utilizing avenues in which most people in the community have had. So I definitely think that there is a space for Republicans to step in and start to create this, to initiate this conversation. I think there's space for us to dominate the conversation, but we can't be scared. We've got to get in there, have those tough conversations. We've got to be willing to look a person in the eye while they're telling you that you're racist, having never met you or spoken with you. You still have to be able to look them in the eye, know who you are, and speak truth. And I think that will go a long way. People are open. As you can see by the data, they're ready, particularly in diverse communities. They are ready and willing to hear something else, but they're courting us. We can't take it for granted or think that all of a sudden it's going to be, that they're going to flip to the Republican side because they're mad at the Democrats.
But don't you think there has to be more of an active approach from Republicans to get rid of the actual racist in the party? And I'll give the example of the Democrats, for example. For the Democrats, remember when we were growing up, you still had Dixiecrats in the Democratic Party. You had people like Zell Miller, who was the governor of Georgia, who later on switched to being a Republican, who he was a senator. No, but he was passing the same racist segregationist laws in the '90s, three strikes you're out, all kinds of things against black people as a Democrat. Democrats just slowly pushed those people out of the party and became a progressive party of electric cars and transgenders. So that's it can be done. We've seen it happen. But when are Republicans going to take that same step and say, look, we'll push these conservative policies, but there's only so much you can do when all of a sudden Marjorie Taylor Greene hops out and says something racist, or Tommy Tuberville talks about how much he loves white nationalists and how they're good patriotic Americans, etc. When are Republicans going to take that step and say, look, these diverse groups of voters agree with us on a lot of stuff, but as long as we are giving aid and comfort to these segregationists, they're not going to get on board with what we're selling?
Okay, so I think it's a couple of things. One, we have to detach individuals from the party. We gotta, as a community, it is our responsibility to look at what each party represents and find out what the foundational core of that party is. And the reason why that's important is because no matter what all the little sly remarks or the little, the moments where any candidate, no matter what side of the aisle, says something that's just utterly ridiculous, forget all of that. When you look at their policies, when you look at how they vote, are they voting based on the foundational principles that this party is supposed to represent? And 99% of the time, both, no matter what side of the aisle you're on, that is happening depending on who is represented. Another thing we need to do is we have to elect people that represent what some of these issues that we're speaking of. And you can't only elect people that are Democrats. That is a problem. If you're one of those voters who go into the polls, into the voting booth, and you look at the list and all you see is Democrats, and you're like, I'm going to vote for all the Democrats. I'm not even going to look at the Republicans. I'm not going to research the Republicans. I'm not going to read about their platforms, while also not knowing very much at all about the people that you're voting for on the Democrat side. Then you are part of the problem, because you're allowing this to continue on when we, the people, are the ones who have all the power in that voting booth. Lastly, I absolutely think that we have to have a conversation about the gatekeepers. I'm going to quote our brother Cat again when he said, you're telling me there's no gatekeepers, but you keep opening the gate. I keep seeing the same people opening the gate. The same thing is happening in politics, particularly when it comes to Black Democrat leaders. And not just Black Democrat leaders, but Democrat leaders as a whole. They are gatekeeping to the community. If all of your information is coming through the opposition of one of the other side, then you have to at some point ask yourself, am I getting the full truth? Am I getting all the information? Or am I getting what this opposition to the other side wants me to hear and see? There's a responsibility that has to fall on the voter, and you've got to take it seriously. There are a lot of Republicans that have great ideas that want to do things that will deeply impact the Republican Party in such a positive way. Prime example, President Trump rolled out the Platinum Plan right before the 2020 election, and Black people still went and voted for Biden, and now you're looking crazy because you're sitting here supporting someone who never supported you. And so I absolutely think that there is a responsibility for the voter to do your research and not just research the side that you like. I also think that we have to elect people that are on both sides of the aisle that have a heart for this. We got to stop electing people who are depending on this political position for their daily bread. They need to have a job that they can go back to after they're no longer in office, so they don't have to attach their livelihood to that position. And lastly, we got to start detaching the person from the party. Learn the foundational principles of each party, then base your vote based off of that. And I think that right there will help us take control of this. It's not the responsibility to police what comes out of people's mouths. You need to police their actions, and the way you do that is with your vote.
All right, we're going to talk more about this after the break because that sounds great. But then also, no one's going to integrate themselves into a party with a bunch of Klansmen and segregationists. You want the Platinum Plan. You have both Vivek Ramaswamy and Ron DeSantis. If they're elected, they will repeal that. They've also said they will repeal the First Step Act. So it's as if we're saying just let's look at policy and join up. But the same people are saying, I'm going to get rid of the actual policies that support your community. But we're going to keep this conversation going. We'll be back after the break. News and Talk 1380 WAOK.